Hello, hello, and welcome back to another monthly life. Can't believe we're already in September. I am absolutely excited to be back again. So, yes, today's topic is going to be an exciting one, actually, and it's one I'm really passionate about. So, please let me know where you're joining from. Just pop something in the chat to let us know where you're joining us from. It's always nice to see who is on the call with me. And if you're joining from LinkedIn, I would kind of be looking here to see what's coming through because sometimes it doesn't pull it across. So um, let me just make sure we are live on LinkedIn. Um, yes, we are. So cool. So I can see LinkedIn here. So if you put anything, I'll probably see it. So yeah, let's know where you're calling, where you're joining us from. Pop that in the chat. It will be nice to see. Today's topic, like I said, is one that's is very important. I would say extremely an important topic, raising young minds. And as usual, we're going to combine the science, we're going to combine emotional intelligence as well and scripture. So please let's make this interactive. Share this session with someone, invite someone, take your time, call someone to join in. And if you have kids around you, or young youth, sit with them and as we're going through, discuss with them. Even if you're watching this on replay, do the same thing. Get the young ones to sit with you, talk to them, interact, ask questions, kind of, turn this into a discussion, because the more we have these conversations with our young minds, the more we actually, they're equipped to rewire their brains to be resilient, but also be able to be emotionally stable, which is what we want them to do, and make the right decisions. So let's see where you're joining us from. I can see Emeka. Oh, that's nice to see you. Chiso, I'm so pleased you could join us. Hello, Juliet. Sunny Wimbledon. Lucky you. Actually, it is sunny here as well, which is great. So great to see you all here. So let's really have some deep conversations. One thing I would say about today's session is the focus is really on the young minds, but the same principle will apply to you, in relationships with other people, either with spouse, with colleagues, with, whoever, because the principle is the same. It's the brain, and it's how the brain works. So the focus is really on the young minds, but you can use the same principle for yourself in different kinds of relationships. So let's get started, raising young minds. And if you've got questions as we go along, pop them into the chat. That would really help. And let's make it interactive as we can, because it's always, a bit difficult when you're doing it on YouTube and LinkedIn as opposed to Zoom. But we can make this very interactive. So post questions. If anything stands out to you while we start the conversation, put it into the chat as well, because something that resonates with you as you put it in might actually resonate with somebody else as well. So as usual, I'm so pleased we're here. Please remember to subscribe to this YouTube channel. If you're watching this on YouTube or on LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn. But subscribe, like, and share, and invite someone. Really do invite someone. So I'm going to start with this quote. And if you received an email invitation, if you're on my newsletter, you would have seen that I used the same quote in the invitation I sent out. And it says, children are not things to be molded, but people to be unfolded. And this is a quote by Jess Lear. Now, this quote is actually really true. And it's one that I really like, because young people are not clays in our hands to be molded or to be forced into our own image. They're actually souls already filled with God's own potential, filled with God's potential, waiting to be nurtured and unfolded. And this is where we really come in. So let me start by, starting with a story. And this story is about the bamboo tree. So when a bamboo is planted, for years, nothing seems to be happening. You water it, you tend the soil, but all you see is bare ground for a long, long time. What you don't see is that beneath the surface, the roots are spreading wide and going deep. So the roots are really, getting deeper, getting solid in the ground. And then suddenly the bamboo shoots up 90 feet tall. That's exactly how our children and students are. So much of what we pour into them initially seems invisible. We might not see any sign, we might not see any result. The way we speak to them, the calmness that we model, the conversations we have, it all kind of looks unseen initially. But beneath the surface, their brains are rewiring, roots are forming, and one day those unseen roots will then sustain incredible growth or incredible decline. So the habits that we model are the roots in our young ones. So, when you really think about it, it just makes you realize the impact and responsibility that we actually have with our young ones. I'm going to remove this at the moment, but please, let's keep the comments coming. Let's make this interactive. If there are questions, pop them in as well as we go through. So, and here's why this matters so much. Neuroscience shows us that a young person's brain is like a construction site. And it's a construction site that is actually, active with possibilities or alive with possibilities, however you describe it. And when you think about a construction site, you think about how it can look disorganized, it can look messy, it can look, like a slate. Initially, at the beginning, when you're laying the foundation, it's literally like a blank slate. And at birth, what you have in our brains is billions of neurons. These are brain cells, so billions of brain cells, but relatively few strong connections. So when you think of the construction site, you might think of the bricks that you've created, and they're all lying ready to be used on the building or structure that you want to set up. And this is how those neurons are. So the neurons, we come with these neurons, but they're all lying ready to be used. So the question then becomes how we use these bricks. How we use these bricks will determine the structure that we erect eventually. So these neurons, these brain cells, have very few connections. So they are there, and the connections that have come really are from the connections of what they hear while they are in the womb. So when you look at the brain, you have the neurons all lying individually, just like the bricks are. And as they grow, or as we grow, because we all the same principle that the kids that we have today are, as we grow, every experience, every repeated thought, every word that we hear or these children hear, then wires these neurons together. And it's like putting one brick on top of another, and the angle you put them will determine the structure that you get. So by adolescence, the brain starts pruning, cutting away unused connections and strengthening the ones used most. And when I was thinking about this in terms of the construction site, you can look at it in different ways. That when you start constructing and you build it up to where you're putting the roof, at some point you might feel, oh, I want to change the structure here. or to the point that, okay, you've built it, you live in it, and after a year or two you decide, actually, you know what, we don't really use this room much, so let's knock down this wall and create an open space because we don't use this room. And that's exactly what happens in the brain. So those neurons, those connections that are not used, the brain starts pruning them, removing them, and the child then does is keeps using the ones that he uses regularly, and that becomes their default, that becomes their autopilot, that becomes their underlying behavior pattern. And the same goes for us. So yes, their brains are open like a blank slate, but the truth is, if we don't intentionally guide them, their brains will still wire themselves anyway, but it will then be shaped by what they're taking in from social media, what they're taking in from peer pressure, fear, negative self-talk, things that they're exposed to, so that it really becomes them deciding based on what they're exposed to, how their brain becomes wired. And that's why our roles as adults is so crucial. So we do shape young minds, not by controlling or forcing them, but by guiding which connections take root in their brains. And this is through our words, through our tone, the tone in which we used to speak to them, through our demeanor, so whether how calm we are, and through our habits as well. So the part of the brain that is responsible for decision making, which is the prefrontal cortex, so that's the frontal part of the brain. So that's that frontal part of the brain where decision making is, where we make decisions, doesn't fully develop till about mid-20s. That means that they rely on us heavily, or rely upon the adults in their life heavily. So that's us, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a parent, whether you're a mentor, to show them how to think, how to process, and how to regulate emotions. So the question then is, in your home or in your classroom, if you're a teacher, what's one challenge that you see young people facing most from your perspective? Let's pop that into the chat and see. It might be anxiety, it might be anger, could even be distraction or self-doubt. What have you noticed with the young ones that you're in contact with or you interact with a lot? What's one challenge that you see them facing most? So let's see what we have here. Hey, Nkechi, greetings from Reading. Great to have you here. So yeah, let's pop things into the chat. What is your experience, maybe as a parent? What challenge do you see young people having the most? I'm looking down here to see if you're on LinkedIn. Let's see what, I want to hear your thoughts. I want to see what, you're experiencing. So pop that into the chat and I'll keep looking. I don't know if there's a delay, but I'll keep my eyes in this comment area to see what's coming through. So every thought is brain activity. So even as you are listening to me now, your brain is changing. The connections, there's a lot going on. A lot of neurons are connecting together. And that activity is what triggers chemicals that create emotional responses. So let's look at, for example, a thought like, I'll never get this right. I always fail. This keeps stress chemicals like cortisol flowing consistently. And for a child, this will feel, it feels like they will get anxious, or they feel defeated. They feel anxious. They feel defeated. On the other hand, a thought like, this is hard, this is quite difficult, but I can learn. This then triggers a different part of the brain where you have dopamine and serotonin receptors, which support motivation, calmness, and resilience. So can you see how the thoughts that we have, thoughts that a child will have, actually activates a different part of the brain, which then creates a behavior pattern that you will have, especially when repeated over a period of time. So the order is a thought. You have a thought which creates the neural firing. So the neurons start connecting, which then creates an emotional or chemical response, which then leads to a felt emotion that you feel in your body. And if this pattern is repeated consistently, it can become a habit or behavior pattern. So scripture helps us with this. Proverbs 23:7 says, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. And if you sit on that and think about that, you can see, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. So that means the thoughts that we have is actually who we are. There's a saying that you see the world not as it is, but as you are. And that's why someone could say something to you and you take it completely different from the way that they intended it to be. And that's because it's landed on your brain, which is wired differently from theirs. And I don't know if you've ever been in an argument or debate or deep conversation or heated conversation with someone where you find out that you're both actually arguing about different things. Very common. Happened to me so many times. So it's really important for us to be aware of what we think, because that is who we are. That is how we perceive things. That is how we see things. How you're wired will determine your narrative about situations. So two people can be going through the same thing, but see it completely differently. And that will create a different emotion in them, which will then create a different action in them. And this is exactly what's happening with our children or with our young ones. So science tells us that when we label and reframe thoughts, that the emotional intensity decreases. So this is literally saying that when we capture the thoughts, you know how the Bible says, take your thoughts captive. There's a reason why. Because when you capture the thoughts, reframe them, then it decreases the emotional intensity of that of that process. So for example, you have a thought that is creating so much fear. When you label it and say, okay, I notice that I'm feeling anxious. What that then does is that first of all, it's because it's capturing the emotion, that emotional brain is literally stopped, it's all paused. When you reframe the thought, then you're taking it away from that thought to a new thought that you reframed it to be, that then creates a different emotion and a more empowering emotion. So as this happens, what we need to do as adults is to now help our young ones do the same thing. So let's see what we have in the chat here. Tolu from Lagos. Oh, well, great to have you here, Tolu, my sister-in-law. So good to have you. So Rebecca says social isolation. They also face challenges of family conflicts. Yes, family conflicts creates a lot of issues in young people's brain. And one of the things that it can actually create is identity issues, or even knowing basically what we're talking about today, how to manage emotions, how to manage thought processes. So these are really powerful. Oh, Christine, oh, so good to have you here. God, you're up early. Great to have you here, Christine. So this thought, the thought process, so these kind of issues that arise in young people as they're growing up is what ends up shaping them, especially if they're not taught how to manage the thought processes or manage the emotions or regulate the emotions. So as adults, we can actually help shape these pathways. So let's look at some things. We can model thought spotting. And what does that look like? When you're worried, when a child is worried, or when you can help them say aloud, or when they are worried, you actually can say to them, that's a worry thought. Let's reframe it now. So you do this with yourself. Notice yourself when you're worried about something, and then say to yourself, identifying it, this is a worry thought. I identify that I'm worried. Now I reframe it. So change the narrative. So whatever has caused, whatever that thought process is that has created the worry, then reframe it, change it to something that is more empowering. The other thing you can do is guide reframing. So when a child says, nobody likes me, don't dismiss it. What you could say instead is, I hear how you're feeling. I understand how you're feeling, but I want you to know that you're loved and important. Let's think together about people who care about you. So tell me, 3 people that you believe care about you. What you're doing there is taking their focus. So identifying the emotion, so validating it, identifying it, recognizing it, but then giving them the truth. Because remember, how you're wired, it becomes who you are. So taking them away from focusing on that negative, you enable them focus on the positive. This is important because there's something the brain does well. The brain latches onto negatives. The reason why it does it is that what our brain's function really is to protect us, to keep us safe. So that means that the brain has to be very alert to things that it doesn't perceive as keeping us safe. So, for example, any thought process that the brain would, that the brain would perceive to be a threat or a danger to us, it has to act, it has to protect us. And how it does this is by activating that emotional response, that stress response, which is the fight, flight, or freeze. And that's why when somebody, for example, maybe gives you feedback or criticism, your first reaction is defense without even thinking through. Because what your brain is doing is fighting back, is that fight response. But what you're meant to do is to just pause and think, what this person is saying, is it actually true? Would it help me? And if it will, then take it on board. If it won't, let it go. So, and this is what we want to really train our young ones to be able to do. So, helping them to reframe or to identify the thought process and change that narrative is so important. So letting them, for in this example, think of 3 people that care about them. So we need to learn how to guide and model healthy thinking, which is so powerful because shaping thoughts literally shapes emotional stability. So another thought a young person might say is, I always mess things up. So now, how would you respond in a way that actually acknowledges their feeling, but helps them reframe that thought process? So, think about how you will do this. And you could write this down on your own notepad or put it in the chat if you want to. But just take time and think about it, remembering that you've got to first validate the child's experience and then let them feel safe, because, show them empathy, because this will enable them feel safe. So by acknowledging it, listening to them gives them safety, makes them feel safe, and makes them actually feel seen as well. Then offer a gentle reframe. This will then shift the thoughts towards more balance and hope. So do that and use that as practice. And or you could even use something else, something that you come across more. The important thing is what not to say is something like, don't be silly. Of course, people like you. That is dismissing their feelings. That's dismissing their thought process and their feelings. And what do you think will happen? their brain will perceive that as a threat. It means that you're not listening, you don't care about me, you don't understand. And you hear a lot of people, young people saying that you won't understand or you don't understand. That's their own, that's their brain's way of responding to what they are now perceiving as a threat. So anything you then say after that, they won't even hear you. Another thing you shouldn't say is stop being dramatic. That's also, their brain will also see that as a threat response. And so you lose them there because you're not actually able to help them. Another thing you shouldn't say is, or another thing you shouldn't do is just ignore it. Because what will their brain do? Their brain will just feel they don't, I'm not seen. I'm not valued. I'm not heard. Honestly, the brain is a fantastic storyteller. The brain creates so many stories, and and most of these stories are false. Most of these stories are the brain's way of thinking it's protecting you, but it's actually not. And that's why I'm so passionate about what I do in terms of training and coaching, because most people don't even think about their brain. Most people don't think about what they think about. People just do. And then you hear people saying, that's how I am. But the truth is, we have so much ability to take control of our brains. We have so much ability. And as a Christian, it's all there in scripture. And for me, that was the most exciting thing for me. Seeing what science is teaching us and actually then realizing, you know what? It's always been in scripture, but now I understand why. So, coming back to the child, it's important to acknowledge the hurt and then gently reframe that narrative towards truth and hope. So important. And like I said at the beginning of this session, we can use this with our partners, with our spouses, with our colleagues, in any form of relationship. It's the same principle. So, any questions, please pop them into the chat because that would actually help me as well. Thank you, Christina. Thank you. So, young people don't just listen to our words. What else do? They watch our nervous system. What does that mean? They're mirror neurons. Mirror neurons, let me explain. Mirror neurons are spindle-shaped neurons that we have in our brain. And I'll give you a typical example how it works. If you see someone yawning or someone in front of you yawns, what happens? You find yourself yawning as well. That's mirror neurons. So mirror neurons literally copies what somebody else is doing. And that's why a lot of times you find yourself copying or wanting to do or doing what other people are doing if you're not consciously aware of what's going on in your brain. So their mirror neurons literally copy what they see in us. So if we lose control, yell, or dismiss them, they learn to respond in the exact same way. And actually, if you think about this, maybe somebody comes to you literally angry, upset, shouting at you. Your first response is the same thing, to shout back, to respond in the same way that they have. And even with the fact that emotions are contagious. So literally, if in fact, I remember working in a place and there was one man in that department that you never knew what mood he would come in with. And I noticed that every time he came in with a sad mood or negative mood, that before you knew it, the whole office was emotionally low. So I had to now, come in. Sometimes I'll come into the staff room there, dancing and singing, and then other people, you see people just lighten up and brighten up. So if you're not aware, if other people's emotions become yours. So it's so important to be very alert. But using this same principle, we can support our young ones as well. So when we pause, breathe, and speak calmly, what we are doing in essence is teaching our young ones, teaching these young ones without words that emotions can be managed. So, for example, they are upset, they are lashing out. You don't go, stop doing that, or stop messing up, or you shut up, or will you stop doing that, or stop messing, just get out of my sight. All those negative things. That's not the way. Go with kindness, go with calmness, breathe. It's even sometimes even you're not saying anything, but just being there calmly. You will soon notice that that their own emotions start mirroring yours. So if we shout, snap, or shut them down, they learn to do the same thing. They learn to escalate. But if we pause, breathe, and respond with calmness, their own brain borrows our regulation. So instead of maybe telling them, calm down now, just try something like, I can see you're upset. Let's breathe together. Or just say, I see you're upset. I'm going to sit here with you. And just don't even say anymore. Just breathe just gently and just stay there. You could even put your hand on them, just touch them. Touch is so powerful. This simple shift will show them what regulation looks like. And you will probably start seeing them doing the same thing without you actually doing anything after a period of time, because what you're doing is wiring a new pathway into their brain just from an action that you're taking. So over time, they begin to internalize it and act it out. Deuteronomy 6, I think 6-7. I'm going to read it. And I'm going to read it from my new Bible. So Deuteronomy 6:6-7 says, and these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. I love that so much. So it's like saying, impress these things on your children. Talk about them as you sit, walk, lie down, and rise. In other words, it's the everyday tone, the everyday rhythm, and modeling that wires their minds. So just take a moment and ask yourself, when I'm stressed, what do my children or my students actually see me do? So take a moment and answer that for yourself. Is it shouting? Is it sighing? Is it praying? Is it breathing? What is it for you? Ah, Mary, so good to have you here. So Mary has a question. Let's see. And I'm going to put this question up actually so I can see it. So can you give a tip on how to handle a situation where you're having the same conversation with the person, providing constructive feedback, yet there is no change? That's a great question and a loaded question. Where so you're having the same conversation with the person, providing constructive feedback, yet there's no change. Mary, there's a lot of things that could be causing this. Again, is it an adult, is it a child? Because that would be a different reasons. With a child, I will probably, or young person, there's so many reasons, but in a way it's actually easier to get about the change by doing the right things. With adults, it might take more time, but it can still be achieved. So some of the reasons why they won't, change doesn't happen is that they're not actually hearing what you're saying. That could be one reason. When I say they're not hearing, a lot of times when we speak, um, because of the way people are wired, because remember what I said at the beginning, the way you're wired, you see the world not as it is, but as you are. So the way you're wired is because, is basically who you are. If it's landing on their brain and their brain sees it, this is not, this is not for me. It's either it's rejecting it, so they're not hearing it, so it's not actually landing. One of the best ways to actually get about change is using questions with people. Surely, if you've noticed that you're giving constructive feedback, you might see it as constructive, but it's landing on a differently wired brain that is not hearing it. One of the ways that I find useful is using questions and doing it consistently. So, for example, they do something you've talked about before, and I'll then ask a question about what they've done and the impact. So, could you just explain to me why you did this way? Not critically, just asking, just and using. It's almost like you being curious with them, being curious. So, could you explain why you did it this way? And not actually saying, why did you do it this way and not the way we've talked about before? Because the brain then sees that as a threat. Because it's almost like, maybe, because especially for people that have been wired to resist criticism for any form of reason. Sometimes it's upbringing. Maybe they were criticized so much when they were young. So for them, criticism is negative. With someone like that, they will shut it out. Their brain will see it as a threat. So when criticism comes or feedback comes, they won't hear it because immediately it's almost like the brain goes into threat response. They'll fight back, and they might fight back with their mouth or even fight back internally without you knowing, by just not listening to what you're saying or not taking it on board. So questions are a good way to use to get deep, so that it becomes more about them, as opposed to you telling me what to do. So I hope that answered your question. So yes, when our brain will fill in the gaps when it doesn't have the information. Exactly. Yes. So the brain will literally fill in the gaps. So questions, I would say questions are a good one, especially when you're not seeing change. Use questions, because that is so powerful, because it then becomes, it's not Mary telling me what to do. It becomes more a responsibility for them. So why have you done this particular way? I'm just curious to understand why. And then you say, okay, so what was the result of this? And to be honest, if it's an adult and they're really not changing, there are different ways to really understand why they're not actually making that change. There can be so many reasons for it, but questions will get you there. As just keep asking till you get to the bottom of it, and hopefully as time goes on, you start seeing change, because then they're taking responsibility. So let's continue. So I want us to kind of look at resilience now. Resilience doesn't come from avoiding hardship or even avoiding stress. Resilience is actually built by practicing the small habits that will end up strengthening the brain's pathway. Like I said just now, even using questions is a way to build the habits you want, to then create the outcome that you want, or doing things like we've talked about, which we will look at again. So young people learn from those habits best when we practice with them. So, I'll give you three that we can look at. So instead of saying something to a child or young person, stop crying, what you could say instead is, let's pause and breathe together. Or let's take 3 slow breaths together. Breathing resets, I call it. Breathing reset. So this just helps, one, put a break on the emotional part of the brain. You could even try the 4-7-8 breathing, which is you breathe in on counting to 4, hold it for count to 7, and then slowly breathe out on counting 8. So, and all this, these breathing techniques, they what we call them is co-regulation, because you're doing it with the person or doing it with the child. So this co-regulation calms their nervous system. Another tip is gratitude shifts. So, and you could just think of this as being at the dinner table or in the classroom and ask, what's one thing you're grateful for today? Gratitude rewires the brain and enables it notice positives, because remember I've said that that the brain focuses a lot on the negative because it has to protect us, because it has to be threat alert to enable to protect us from what it perceives to be danger. And that's why you could do so many good things for someone over years, and the moment you do something that they perceive to be negative, that's what they hold on to. That would be it. They forget all the good you've done in the past and focus on that one negative thing you did. That's the brain. And the unfortunate thing is, the problem with that example I've given is that it's the person holding on to it that actually suffers, because you've activated your emotional brain and create, by this wiring, that negative wiring that you're holding on to. So gratitude, focus on the positive, focus on being grateful for things that have happened, and that shifts you away from the negative to the positive, and then you're wiring positive emotions as well. Another is faith-based affirmations. Help them replace lies with truth. And so you could say, let's focus on this, or let's declare this together. I am fearfully and wonderfully made, which is a lovely scripture I love from Psalm 139:14. And this will just help rewire identity at the deepest level. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. And it just, for someone that maybe is somebody has told you're not worthy, or we don't like you, or somebody that's whose self-worth is being impacted, it's something like this, an affirmation like this, a declaration like this, actually shifts them to the truth that actually I am valued, I am worthy. So the question then is, what one daily habit that you are going to start with your student, with your child, or with your mentee? Is it breathing, gratitude, or the affirmations? Just drop it in the chat. A, B, C. A, breathing. B, gratitude. C, affirmation. Or even if it's not a child or mentee or student, for yourself. For yourself. So let's see what you have. Are there any questions? So B, I like that. Gratitude, Christina. That's good. So yes, please pop in the chat if you've got questions. Can't see any, or even comments. What stood out for you so far? What resonated with you? What are you going to work on? Let's see those comments coming through. I'm assuming you're all thinking very deeply. Gratitude. Okay, that's good. Gratitude to Lou. Chiso, affirmations. Yeah, affirmations are powerful, honestly. Do you know, I don't know if I have it here. I bought a book recently, and it's I think it's called The Promises in the Bible. I think it's called. And I've just been going through it. It's just so wonderful, because you just see there's so many promises that we don't even think about, that when we really focus on, they're so powerful. And in our Mindsight Women's Network this Thursday, we were actually, we had a prayer session, and it was on promises and identity. They're so powerful. Those declarations, Shirley, where, declarations, affirmations, use them properly, in the sense that when you're affirming or declaring something, think about the words you're saying and believe them. That's so important. Really believe them. As a Christian, because they are promises in the Bible, because they are from, the promise God has given, and God's promise is yes and amen. He says, that there's no word that comes out from his mouth that will return unto him void. It will accomplish what pleases him and prosper in what has been sent out to do. So it's yes, it's done. So when you take that and hold on to it and declare it, you're declaring it, not that it's coming from you, but this is God's promise to me. So I believe it, I receive it. And that, if it's a thing of identity, that is who I am. If it's a promise that he will fulfill, you know what? I choose to believe, and that's faith. And that's, that belief, that trust. So coming from affirmations and declarations that way are more powerful, because that is how it connects with our emotional brain. That will then enable us carry out actions. And the more we wire that, it becomes a behavior pattern, and we can walk in that. And the truth is, when we start doing that, then, we'll see life changing around us, because what you focus on expands, and that's what you attract to yourself. So let's move this. Let's see. So Nkechi says, you have confirmed the fact that we should never invalidate someone's concerns. Absolutely. Yes, that is so important. It's so important to listen, validate, because that shows them you're hearing. And that actually wires into their brain that aspect of care, empathy. But when you dismiss it, remember, threat, and then it triggers their flight, or freeze response. And that's where they shut down or don't hear you. So whatever you say, after that is a complete waste of time. So let me close with this promise. And it's from Isaiah 54:13 that says, all your children shall be taught by the Lord, and great shall be the peace of your children. That is just a fantastic promise, that at the end of the day, our children are taught by the Lord. So how are they taught by the Lord? This is one example. You're on this live session, you're hearing, you're getting this knowledge, you're taking it, you're using it with your children, you're teaching them, you're actually living it, so that they can emulate from you. Great shall then be their peace. So that when others are getting agitated, when others are getting worried, they're able to understand how to regulate their own emotions, because they've learnt it. It's something that you've shown them how to do. So remember the bamboo. Growth is often invisible. Initially, we might not see change. Initially, we might not see anything happen, but because truly growth takes time. But much of what we actually do, the words, the reframing, the calmness, the daily rhythms, most of these things, initially will feel unseen, but unseen roots are wiring in their brains for resilience. And one day, those roots will then sustain strength that would really surprise you. So be patient with them. Be patient with really, patience is so important. Be patient with them, but keep repeating the positive actions. Keep repeating these empowering actions. Keep repeating them, because as time goes, as you're doing it, it's wiring in their brain. And as time goes on, you will see it. You'll be so surprised. I remember when, I'm always talking about I am limitless, and we need to be limitless, because this is who God has called us to be. And my son was quite young then. He was about to take an exam. And the exam was such a difficult exam that he didn't need to take. So I said to him, why are you putting yourself through this? You don't need to take this particular one. You've already passed this one that you're going into the school. Why take this extra one? And he says to me, Mom, you're always saying that we're limitless. So why are you now telling me not to do it? Are you saying I'm not limitless? And honestly, I just had to back off and go, oh. So I went, no, actually, you are. Please go ahead, do it. And he did so well. So honestly, the words we say, initially we might not see anything, but it does with time, they will surprise you. So parents, teachers, mentors, you are not molding clay. You're watering roots, you're wiring futures, and you're equipping young minds to think differently, feel more stable, and thrive in an uncertain environment. So, my encouragement to you is remember that every gentle response, every reframed word, every act of patience is a seed of resilience in the next generation. So please, if this has encouraged you, subscribe so you don't miss any live episode, because I go live every first Saturday of the month. And I also post my podcast episodes here on YouTube as well, or I post them on LinkedIn as well. They're LinkedIn's. But so please subscribe to the YouTube channel anywhere you're looking for, anywhere you're logging in from, because it's quite useful. I tend to post things on YouTube quite a bit. And share this session with a parent or even a teacher who needs it. Teachers are very important. I have been into a class where I saw a teacher shut down a child, and immediately I could see his body language. And he never spoke in that lesson again. And at the end of the session, I spoke to the teacher. I said, do you realize what you did to that child could actually impact him quite significantly? And she had no clue. So I then reminded her of what she did, and she didn't even notice the difference in the child. So I got her to really go and speak to that child after and never do it again, because words we use are so powerful. I was speaking to a business owner recently who kept saying that, he's not good at math, so he doesn't really know anything about his accounts, that he just leaves it to his accountant because he's not good at maths. When I probed further, it came from what his teacher had told him at school, that he was not good at maths. See how crazy that is. This was a grown adult man in his 50s. So, I did encourage him to now start going through his accounts and keep telling himself that he's good at maths. In fact, I asked him quite a few questions, and it turned out that he was fantastic. He was great at doing maths, but they believed that he couldn't. So let's pay attention to what we say, and pay attention to what we tell ourselves, actually, and what we say to our young ones. So if you do want to go deeper with this, I'd love to walk alongside you and, connect with me on LinkedIn. You can, I'll leave a link, especially on YouTube, there will be a link at the bottom to Mindsight Women's Network, but you can find me on the Mindsight Academy. So that, if you need me, find me on Mindsight Academy, and I'd love you to join our network if you want to. And finally, if you still haven't gotten a copy of the book, Rewire Your Brain with Neuroscience and Scripture Every Day, get your copy. This book it's actually a 366-day devotional. It will change your life. This is your own personal coach. A lot of what I'm talking about, what I spoke about today, you will find here as well. So get your copy from Amazon or Mindsight store, and this book will truly bless you. And yes, don't forget to go listen to my podcast on Lead to Excel podcast. You would love it. A lot of conversations, and sometimes I'm solo speaking about different topics. Yes, together we can raise resilient young minds, because when their roots are strong, their futures are unshakable. So we have a responsibility to really help our young ones, and we can do it. We really can. So thank you so much. Our next live will be next month, October, and I think it's October 4th. I think that's the first Saturday of the month. So first, I'll be back here October 4th. So love to join you. And I'm just looking at the chat. So Juliet says repetition rewires the brain. Yes, it does. Teachers, teachers are not all cruel, but teachers have a great responsibility. They really do. They have a great responsibility, just like parents. We all have, and adults. We all have a great responsibility. So it's, whether you see a young person, doesn't even have to be related to you, is using these tools will really make a difference. Because even if they're not getting it at home or not getting it at school, if you come in contact with them, even in the workplace, the this generation coming in, we can truly be a support to them. We can help them, we can nurture them, we can make a difference in their lives. How we manage them, how we embrace them, these things will make a difference in their lives. So yes, please, we all have a responsibility. So make the most of it. Let's truly make impact in this next generation. Thank you, thank you, thank you for joining my session today. And it's been a great pleasure. This topic, is so passionate to me. And so if you do want to chat more about this, please do reach out. And I'll look forward to seeing you next month in October. Have a fantastic rest of your month. See you in October. Bye for now.